Okay, so I am Sinix. I
Robert.
Yeah, sure, why not? Okay, Robert. You can call me Sinix. It's fine. Basically, I'm a self-taught artist, but I didn't get into art until late in the game. I was like 19, 20. I'd already failed at everything else. I wanted to be a programmer. Didn't work out. Wanted to be a pilot. Kind of did it for a while, but it wasn't for me. Eventually, I stumbled into art. I kind of fell in love with it based on the communities and the competitive levels and just everything about it. It was fun, it was exciting, and it was challenging. So all of that stuff led me to fall in love with it. I went on to just do it a lot. Even if you start late, it's never too late. I know people that started in their 30s, 40s, still had a great career. But yeah, I went on to work a little bit in the industry. Your turn.
Okay. Well, who's already familiar with like his story? Like on the YouTube, you guys all watch these videos, and all right, cool. So this is a pretty good idea of that. What about my stuff? Anyone? Okay, all right. What is my story? It's weird to kind of introduce yourself with these things. I mean, there's like the imposter syndrome kicking in. That I still don't feel like I'm a real artist and all that stuff, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Yeah. Where did I come from?
Iraq.
I was born in Iraq and escaped Desert Storm. Fast forward, went to art school for entertainment design here at Art Center. What happened then? Then I worked a little bit here and there professionally as a concept artist and designer. Didn't really like it, so I developed a YouTube channel, and here we are now. And I was able to meet some cool people and be here at this LightBox convention. So it's my first convention at having a table and all that. But like as he said, I definitely love the people and the art and the community and the idea of learning and challenging yourself as an artist. But not just with, oh, I want to do a cool painting and I want to do this project, but also looking on the inside and dealing with your own pasts to, be able to move forward in life, because there's a lot of things that hold us back and all that stuff. So that's why we're here. Yeah.
Correct. That was the right answer. Everyone give him a round of applause. He knew his name. He knew where he came from. He got it all right.
I need new friends. All right, cool.
So we're going to talk a little bit about all this stuff, but before we get too deep, we are going to just quickly mention some of the goals of this panel, and I think you can probably sum those up better than I can.
Yeah, because I have it written down. I'll just read it. Addressing the creative journey's mental hurdles as an artist and how it's impacted by things from your life experiences, whether it's from your childhood, social media, emotional insecurities, we all feel it, and to find a way to acknowledge those things and then move forward by defining what success might look like for you. And each and every one of us has our own goals, and to be able to aim towards that goal while also knowing there's things holding you back that you can address will help you get there. And so that's kind of the my take on it. And then you wanted to talk about...
Yeah, and also it's a lot about just kind of trying to rekindle the childlike love for art and stuff and learning to enjoy the process, and not just the product, and just having a good time with it. We'll have a little bit of fun, work on our community building, all that good stuff. Just, keep it lighthearted, serious stuff, but it's important to take serious stuff, with a little bit of a light heart.
Sure. You're a better speaker than I am. When it comes to, as I was talking about, anxieties and drawing and things that get in the way, how many of you, when you start to draw, you start to feel this resistance and like pressures and self-doubt? Anyone? Okay. See? All right. We all feel that. I was confirming that for me. Go ahead.
Jumping along, now we're going to actually get into topics. And then we'll talk about them like little segments of a podcast. It's delightful. This is my own little NPR.
Feel free to donate. Okay. By the way, so we have these little segments of, let's say, chapters of what we'll talk about. And what's it called? From between those, we could open it up to like any input from the audience, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so early life. So the reason I wanted to have this as a panel, section of this talk is because wherever you are today, wherever I am, wherever anyone is today, you're operating with a certain programming that happened to you when you were a child and as you developed into a teenager, etc. Nobody can escape that. There are things that happened, whether it's a tiny thing that someone said or a bigger traumatic event, those things all add up, and it makes you who you are for now. And let's say there were a lot of those things that happened to you, and they prevent you from doing what you want, following your dreams, applying to companies, thinking that you're not good enough to even start or it's too late to start. All those things have an origin. And the reason I point that out is because for me, I was able to slowly chip away at all these moments in my life, in my childhood, that programmed me to feel a certain way, to feel insecure about how I'm going to be seen or what I should say or what I should show to impress people, things like that. It could be from family, from classmates, whether you had bullies or older brothers or sisters or whatever it might have been. And so I want to bring this up because just as a sort of encouragement to say that wherever you are, it's going to be fine because you're not really defined by those things, because you can always go back, whether it's through writing, as I have, or doing it through art or therapy. You can truly reprogram and rewrite how you function in such a way that you kind of clear the path for yourself moving forward and sort of reinvent what you want yourself to be. For me, that it's been maybe like a 6-year journey when I started writing and started addressing the parts about myself that held me back with, art. Like I have these visions of, I want to do these paintings, I want to do this art, I want to share things, but there were always these things that held me back, whether it's, well, if I do it, I better not show who I really am because that was never, let's say, accepted in the past. So I should only show what people like already and things like that. And kind of getting help with both medication and therapy for a bit recently has been great. I was able to go to a therapist. I've been maybe 4 or 5 sessions, and it just being able to sit down and somebody's there dedicated to just look at you for the first time, and so it was really good to get through a lot of things, and they're trained professionals to help you. And I ended up weaning off of medication and doing that. We'll talk about how to do that later in terms of how to better move forward. But yeah, that's kind of my gist of what I wanted to say about that. Do you have anything to add to that?
Kind of. It's not necessarily like related strictly to art, but it's important to remember that our early life is kind of where we learn to how we show affection, how we show love, all that stuff. And it's important to remember that because all of us kind of grew up in different households, so we learn those things differently. And I can tell you, I've struggled a lot with like just building connections with people, just because the way we learn to show that the way we learn to show different emotions is different. And so it always takes a little bit of understanding to build those social connections. I grew up in a household that was extremely fun and silly, as you might notice. Like it was just, everyone was, it sounds weird, but everyone was teasing each other all the time. I know.
Oh, that
what
makes
a surprise.
sense now. Okay.
And, it was like, my mom would just like show up randomly when we were like 4 years old with like a Halloween mask on and just scare us for no reason, like late at night, like just run into the room, like, all this stuff. But like, so that's, we all grew up differently, but that's how I learned to show people that I care. So oftentimes it's come back to hurt me in a lot of ways, because oftentimes when I'm like forming connections with people, I'll be teasing them, or remembering like how I learned, like this is fun, we're wearing it, like, but you run into people and through no fault of either of you, you show it differently. So it's important to like keep that stuff in mind and don't always try to see things through your own lens and kind of be like, okay, they probably grew up differently than I do. Maybe they're trying to form a meaningful connection, and maybe, the way they show it is just, it's foreign to me. So
that's a good point. Like, assuming that your experience is the same, well, like you said, don't look through it through your own lens and assume that everyone had that same experience. Because you mentioned that and saying that your childhood was mostly fun,
teasing,
mostly. Right? I don't know. Like maybe it's a Middle Eastern thing in our culture. We're not very open So things like emotions are a no-no. Like you don't show that, especially if you're male. And it's like, because of that, my parents were influenced and their parents were influenced by that, and it kind of just gets passed on to us. So for me, it's taken me a long time to learn how to open up and to genuinely connect with people, because in order to do that, you have to be vulnerable. And I've never been around a family that's like that. So to see a family that's like crying with each other and hugging, I'm like, wow, how are they doing that? That's amazing. Because like the moment I'm near my family, it's like, okay, well, you have to put on the face and pretend that everything's all right. When they ask if you're okay, you say, absolutely, life is great. But on the inside, it's like, nah, and you can't open that, because then, I don't know. A lot of times in my childhood, in my teen years, I think every time I was more open about things, it resulted in some kind of ridicule or scrutiny, because the person, whether it was family or friends, they felt uncomfortable with that. And so the way they react to it is immediate rejection or ridicule, or like, I don't feel comfortable with this, so I'm going to make fun of it, that kind of thing. And so for me, it sort of trained me to believe that, okay, well, the vulnerable part of me should just be hidden and make everyone feel comfortable, because you don't want to disturb the waters or so. So I'm learning to undo that, like step by step, and it's been a great thing, because as a result, my art changes, and the connections I have with people changes, and then my goals start to change, because then it's like, okay, well, if I can overcome this and make a difference in my own life, I can use whatever platform I have to say, hey, I'm like you, we're all the same. You can get through it, it'll be fine, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and all of this stuff also affects, to go into how it affects art and stuff, it affects how we perceive critiques and things like that. I know, like, it is impossible to harm me with a critique, because anytime people are like, well, that is the worst thing I've ever seen, your voice is so annoying, I can't stand it, I'm like, oh, they care, they really care about me.
Because you perceive it as
I'm
love.
the type of person to go, like, I'll just check 4chan and be like, oh, there's a thread about me, and they're all making fun. And I'm like, oh, this is great. It makes me feel good, kind of.
That's amazing.
Which is weird. I'll be the one to like go in anonymously and like write like, oh yeah, he looks like a wrinkly teenager, and like leave it as a post, because it's funny to me and I enjoy it. I'm
for the longest time, I didn't take criticism very well, because the way I interpreted it was, it wasn't, hey, you could be better at this thing if you did this. Instead, I interpreted it as, you're worthless. What are you even trying to do? Do a better job. What's wrong with you? So I don't know. Realizing that that's a result of how I was brought up. It wasn't that direct from my parents, but it was more like there was a lack of emotional connection and encouragement. So it's fascinating to see it elsewhere happening. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. We can move on.
We can move on.
Next topic and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, does anyone have anything to add to that? Has anyone?
They can wait. I think it's better to do.
I want to hear the audience.
Okay, fine.
Any thoughts on that? Yeah, over there.
I have a question. When you say, because I've heard people say this a lot, where they go back and rewrite their story, can you get a little bit into specifically what you would do in that case?
Yeah.
You can't change factual things.
Right.
I understand it's about reframing.
But you can. All right, so it takes a bit of imagination, but like it's like this, and they do this a lot in therapy, where I could just tell a story. I've told the story before, but I was here in California, and I was trying to do a drawing, and I felt every time I picked up the pencil and went towards the paper or whatever, there was this feeling of, yeah, I want to draw, but don't make it too good, don't make it too beautiful, and I didn't know why. So I wanted to fill in that answer of why. And so I was writing whatever came to mind with that emotion, and I was able to find the origin. And so I was, I think, 9 or 10, and I was in my room, and I love video games, so I was looking at all these fun magazines, and I remember drawing this picture of an orc from World of Warcraft, and I was so proud of it. Diablo, it was a demon from Diablo 2, one of those. And I was really proud of it, and I couldn't wait to share it with people. It was probably the best thing I've ever done. And so I think I showed it to my brother. He's like, oh, that's cool, man, whatever. And I showed it to my dad. Yeah, awesome, very cool. But then I went outside. And my neighbor John was hanging out outside, nearby. I'm like, John, come here. I want to show you something. And he's like, uh-huh, what is it? And so I'm like, I did this drawing, check it out. And I handed it to him, and he took it, and he was looking at it, and then he looked up at me very slowly with this evil smile, and he just crumpled it up, threw it, and ran. That moment, like, broke my being. And so, and then I remember running after him, wanting to, like, hurt him, but I couldn't catch him. He ran and he hid behind something. Anyway, but the point is, that moment programmed for me, hey, don't do anything too beautiful, and definitely don't show it, because it'll just be crumpled up and thrown away. So by rewriting that and revisiting it and coming to it with an adult perspective is what I mean by rewriting it. Saying, okay, well, here's what actually happened. It's not that I'm worthless, or like this is a moment where my art is just inevitably going to be rejected. It could have been many other things, like maybe there was a bit of envy. Maybe the person was going through something that you don't understand at the time. And so going back to that moment and looking at it and acknowledging the emotion and being with it helps you move on. And in a sense, not necessarily recreating what actually happened, but understanding it from a more experienced perspective. Okay. Early life.
The artistic journey. One man, one solution. This summer.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, it's me?
Yeah.
I thought you wrote stuff down, right?
I don't know what I wrote.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, we've talked a little bit about the early life, how that affects things a little bit. Obviously, the artistic journey gets into a whole nother slew of issues and things. I can talk about my weird and lame and horrible experiences in the art world because, like I said, self-taught artist, which means I had never made a friend that was related to art in any way. So as I started to get into it in my 20s, I suddenly found, I am getting highly isolated. I mean, ridiculously, I have not talked to a new person in a very long time. And I didn't really think about it at the time. This was my artistic journey. I was getting really good. It was kind of fun and challenging. And, years were going by as I was just getting better and better. And also, without, thinking about it, more and more isolated. I kind of reached a point where I was not getting out of the house. And for whatever reason, just from kind of living that lifestyle, I started developing agoraphobia to an extreme extent, where as soon as I would even get out of my, driveway, whatever, if I tried to drive anywhere, I would just have uncontrollable panic attacks. My hands would be shaking. It feels like you're freezing and burning up at the same time. Just miserable, miserable time. And I just tried to be like, okay, I'm just gonna try to manage this and deal with it. But yeah, it only got worse and worse. And at the time, I was only getting better and better at art. So it all kind of started to peak when I started to actually work, and I got a job with electronic arts. And then like all that stress and unhealthiness, both socially, mentally, even physically, because I was in this state where I'm just like, I'm just going to stay up at night because that's my work time. I grind at night. I get stuff done. I make awesome art when it's late at night. So I was just sleeping during the day. I hadn't seen the sun in a long time. I think I still have lingering effects on my voice because, believe it or not, I went a couple years without actually talking. This sounds crazy. I know it is crazy. It got so bad, you can hear it in my early videos on YouTube, how weak and strained my voice is trying to talk, because your muscles will actually atrophy away, and you won't be able to have any range or emotion in your voice. So it's an extreme case of agoraphobia and anxiety. But yeah, it all came to a head when I got that electronic arts job and everything. And I was like, I realized, what am I doing? I feel miserable. I feel sick. Everything's like, there's this added stress of deadlines, which I'd never really dealt with before. Since I didn't go to art school, I never learned about working on schedules and doing things in a healthy way and developing, like thumbnails. I was always just making fun stuff. So it just crashed, and I had the worst panic attacks. I broke out in stress hives. I was in the hospital. All this horrible stuff. It was just my whole world came crashing down, and it was pretty bad. I had to actually admit, like, after it kind of went to that point, and then after that, I just said, okay, I'm just gonna quit art. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not happy. So I quit art for like 2 years, and during those 2 years were equally miserable because I didn't try to solve the problem. I didn't attack it. I was just like, well, I'll just transfer all of that competitiveness and obsession over to video games, and I'll just play Ragnarok online all day long. And I was super sick with my Assassin Cross, and he was awesome. And but that was all. I was just living this lifestyle where I was just wasting away. But I was like, oh, I get my little carrot every day by doing this little game with no real long-term benefit. But yeah, even that, I was still atrophying away and just falling apart. Eventually, I had to like call up family and be like, I am not okay, and I need help because I don't know like where this is going. So eventually, yes, as you touched upon, and I think this will be the section where we talk more about hurdles and things and how to overcome them during the artistic journey. But yes, eventually I did finally. I didn't know what was like. My heart rate was a resting 150, which is very unhealthy. So like when they first took me to the hospital, because I'm like, I feel like I'm dying at all times. And they took me to the hospital with that constant panic attack state. It never dropped below 150 for months at a time. So it probably aged me a lot. But yeah, I had to go to like cardiologists and all that stuff. And eventually it was the, getting on a little bit of, antidepressants that relieved the stress. It took my heart rate down, took the stress level, and then I was able to start walking my way into some kind of recovery, which I was going to let you talk, but maybe, I don't know. Do you want me to just
keep going?
Yeah, okay, fine. So eventually that with the medication and everything, I was able to finally like regulate just a little bit and reevaluate everything. And this is at a time when I'm in my mid-20s, even creeping into the late 20s, I believe. And I was finally able to be like, okay, what am I doing? Now that I can think a little bit clearly, I know that I feel still my body feels like trash every day. So I'm going to start exercising, and I'm like, what else am I doing wrong? Well, I'm almost, I'm going toward 30. I have 0 friends. I have 0 social life. So I started, doing little things. I started making I had to make my own because I didn't know where to find any. I made my own little sketch group because I knew some online people. And I was like, I'm just going to make a sketch group, go out to that. I started building connections. Alan's back there. I started going to figure drawing every day for the past 5 or 6 years. I've gone to not every day, that sounded stupid. I've gone every week, once a week, like clockwork for the past over 5 years. I've seen so many people naked. It is ridiculous. I'm desensitized to everything. I've seen it all. And, but that consistency and that social like I learned to make friends again. I learned to socialize. And eventually, once you start building all these pieces together, I learned to love art again and do all that stuff, which we'll talk about in a bit. But basically, yes, there is path forward to recovery and all that stuff. But I'll let you talk about your journey and everything.
Yeah. It's funny. Looking at... so they're seeing what that is?
Yes.
Yeah, looking at that piece... what was it, a year and a half ago? Last year, I won a competition out in Japan for this digital art battle. One of the things about winning is that they said you have to do a mural. And so I'm like, okay, sure, how big is it? And it's this huge wall. It's like, probably half the size of that, still pretty big. And looking at this, I can look at any part of this and remember the exact anxiety I was feeling for every square inch. Because at that time, I hadn't really dealt with the problems that I was having so directly. And one of them being, it's going to be seen by so many people. I better make it, relatable to everyone. I'm going to include the themes that I saw in Japan so that it's a valid piece. Otherwise, if I do something fun and for myself, it wouldn't count. Things like that. And I don't know. So for my artistic journey, I guess I, worked professionally here and there. I was on Guild Wars 2 for a while. Did a couple movie things here and there. But emotionally, I think for the most part, all the work that I've ever done has been, I guess, forced in a way, kind of like what I was talking about with this. But I definitely wasn't as intense as your anxiety. I never got the shakes or anything, but it definitely held me back. For, I guess, the last 3 years, it's been an upward trajectory. So in the past, it was like kind of stagnant. Things weren't really happening. A lot of things were holding me back. But having made YouTube videos, going in and out, a bit of a hiatus, but back and do it again, I'd say that I'm a little bit more free. And I think the goal, for all of us, is when you're doing your art, your drawings, your stories, whatever it is that you do, ideally you want to be in this sort of inner child flow state where you don't really care about all these things. And sure, they might be there, but to be in such a place where you've addressed those things and they don't affect you. So lately, I find myself doing that, and I'm able to do that when I say, okay, this drawing that I'm about to do, I'm not showing to anyone, just to see what would happen. And as a result, it's something that's literally pure and not for anyone. And I guess my goal, because it's a journey, I haven't reached the end, I'm still figuring all this out, is to be able to do that and also be vulnerable enough to share that art with the world, even if it doesn't align with what's already popular or what people expect of me. Oh, you're Ahmed Aldoori, where's your drawing of pretty elf fairy girls? What is this? This isn't what we expect of you. So it's a lot of, I'm even sweating right now just talking about it. Yeah.
Those elf girls, though.
The elf girl, come on. I've drawn so many. I mean, I love doing it, but it's like it's almost like, hey, I could do this little cool trick, and then in a way, it's like there's an audience say, okay, we'll do it again. Oh, sure, okay, cool, do it again. Keep doing it. What's wrong? And so it's this kind of tyrannical relationship with this golem-like creature as the inner critic, But so far, it's been great. Good.
That just gave me this flashback of the movie True Lies. Where he just sits in the corner. Do it again. Slowly.
Oh my God.
Sexier.
Stop it.
Sexier
Stop.
this time.
God, you're going to creep people out. Anyway, so, yes. I
Stupid, filthy habits.
I can't do it, mate. Yeah, so I don't have much to add to the artistic journey.
Oh, you can. This is a good time. You can talk about kind of how you got over different things. Or did you already get in touch?
I think I did. Yeah, I mean, just through writing.
Yeah.
Most of my sketchbooks are just words. Like there's drawings in there, but like I just write. And I guess one thing that's really helped, if you've ever felt this hyper perfectionism, where if you do something, it's like there's this somebody over you with a clipboard trying to make just watching you and making sure you don't mess up, and then you don't want to mess up because that person will not necessarily punish you well, it is a form of punishment, but this kind of like, oh, really, you messed up there, but it hurts us because we're social creatures and we want to be accepted. For me, when I had that resistance with doing art, this rigidness, this tense, I have to make this good and bulletproof from anyone's criticism. And that goes back to a moment when I was in, I guess, high school. I was learning to drive, and I don't usually talk about my family, but I'll just say this story. My dad was, in the passenger seat, and I was driving because you have to get like a certain amount of hours with a parent or guardian before you can get your license. And so I was so terrified of like not driving right because he's been kind of emotionally closed off his whole life, and all he could say was either pass or fail. And we don't want to get that rejection from, somebody so close to us. And, because of that, I was super rigid and super like tense and trying to get it at exactly 20 miles per hour because that's what the sign said. and as a result, I was driving really jerkily. Like it was a bad experience. And my dad, when he should have said, "Oh, it's okay, calm down. You know, it'll be fine. You know, you can just slow down a bit. We'll do it again." Instead, I got what I got was, "Why are you driving so jerky? What's wrong with you?" And that moment really hurts, and it's kind of like an emotional thing. But as a parent, you're supposed to kind of be there to uplift, not like ridicule or punish. And so it's funny. I was revisiting that because I was still feeling that exact moment show up when I would do any kind of painting or art. And so I let myself go back to that moment. In this case, it is kind of rewriting history. And as if my current self, is sitting in the back seat watching this happen, but also yelling at that guy who was my dad's a completely different person now. He's great. He's awesome, super helpful, supportive. But back then, I was pacing in my apartment. I mean, like a year ago when I was addressing this, I was pacing around in my apartment, literally yelling at him. Like, it's called like kind of integrating your shadow, the willingness to be your most honest self and how you really feel about something or someone, whether you want to yell at that person. I was like at the top of my lungs and calling him names and is like, "You effing idiot! You're supposed to encourage, you moron!" Like very harsh things, but at the end of it, that thing never came up again. And it was because I was able to go back and say what I really wanted to say. And I didn't have to say anything to the actual person. Like he's a great person now and all that stuff. But back then, what I needed was what I did. I didn't get what I actually needed to get. So letting that be something I address definitely helped overcome how that affected my art, if that makes sense. Anyway, I thought I'd share that. Maybe it's helpful. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna slide on along to the next slide, which we've kind of touched upon, but go into a little bit more depth on social media stuff. I know you have a lot to say about that. So, in my experience, once again, going back to what I said, childlike, glee of getting teased. I've been relatively fine. I haven't experienced a lot of the same feelings that I know you've gone through and a lot of other people go through when it comes to just putting your work out there for others to see and everything that goes along with that, and like waiting and people like this one, and do they not like, all that type of stuff. I feel that to some extent, but I don't know. I want to let you start on this one, actually.
Yeah. I mean, you can frame social media in different ways because it's a great thing. I mean, with the advent of the internet, this is we've never had this before as a human civilization, where we can share things immediately with everyone in the whole world, for the most part. And it's like, well, you could share knowledge, you could share what you're doing, you could see what other people are doing, build communities such as this, and have really, really awesome things. But the other side of it is it can be something that, let's say, activates those insecurities when it comes to sharing your work and wanting to be accepted. Because like I said, we are social creatures. We naturally want to connect with others and be accepted and not seen as worthless, right? And so when it comes to sharing your art or your projects on Instagram, whatever it might be, if you're posting to share and you genuinely just want to put it out there to whatever, that's cool. But if you're posting to, let's say, evaluate your own worth, then we go into the realm of anxiety and things that need to be addressed. Because it's like, yeah, if we post to share, that's great. But if you're posting for validation, it's like, hey, what is it that you want me to post so that you'll like me? And that's the wrong game to play. The ideal way to go about it is to say, yeah, we could share wherever, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing that I'm doing. This is what I love. And I just so happen to also share it. So the goal in this scenario is I'm doing art for me. I'm doing art for this vision that I have, this story I want to tell with these cool little characters and whatever. And hey, here it is. And the other scenario would be, oh, that's where people get validated. What is it that's cool? What is it that I need to do? Because I know I'm definitely not good enough as is. So let me cater and curate everything I do to result in good, likes and follows and stuff. Do you have anything to add to that before I?
No, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly that everything you put out there, you should be doing stuff that is fulfilling you and that you are interested in, that you love, and not ever trying to chase, like, oh, well, this is, everyone's drawing, elf girls, so I better draw some elf girls. You should always be, you should always be just doing whatever you love. Don't, worry about it, because honestly, you do better when you're just like, I love this thing and I want to do it. Because people, more than anything, they enjoy experiencing other people's passion for stuff. If you're just really passionate, it's that people like being around that, because it inspires them, it gets them excited. And they're like, this is weird, I don't know what it is, but man, this person's so into it, and it's just kind of, it's fun to look at.
To add to that, like, it's very easy for someone to say, like, for me or Rob here to say, don't worry about it. But another strategy is to, let's say you want to start sharing your art with the world. You have a cool project you want to do. And then step towards that goal, whether it means picking up a pencil or writing something out. Immediately pay attention to what you're feeling. And whatever that is, acknowledge it, write it out, and just see what your body's doing. See what emotions are rising up, what muscles are tensing up, and then see if that's tied to like an emotion. So as you move forward on the road, there's going to be these landmines. I like to call them landmines, and they kind of activate things, and they either make you stop and go back, and you don't do anything, which is not what you want to do, or you say, okay, well, I'm here. I know that I'm feeling this thing. I know that I could either go back or find out a way to overcome it. Because you and all of us, we've survived millions of years of resilience and figuring ways to go forward. So paying attention to what's happening, writing it out, acknowledging it, and every time you go to draw, if it comes up again, okay, that must mean it's something specific and special, and it requires some kind of attention, whether it's therapy. And therapy's great. It's been totally worth it. There's nothing to be ashamed of wanting validation, wanting these things, and hoping that you're loved. Like, that's completely natural. Just don't be ashamed and be okay with it, and just ask yourself why you want those things, so that you can leave that need behind and just be you without needing to change yourself. I hope that was made sense.
Yeah. And to just also touch on a little bit more social media stuff, which is just a general thing. But if you want to build a community, whether it's fans or just an equal sense of community, friends, and all that stuff in social media, vulnerability is the key to really connecting with people and building something that's more than just surface level. I don't know. I'm a big fan of like Charlie Kaufman movies. He did like Eternal Sunshine adaptation, all those ones. And I used to be like, why do I like these movies so much? And then I watched him give some talks on screenwriting, and all he talked about was vulnerability. All you have to do is be as vulnerable as you can at all times. And when you watch those movies, you're just like, I can't believe he's saying, especially like adaptation where he's writing about it himself.
Oh my God.
It's just like, I can't believe he's saying these embarrassing things about himself and all that stuff. But you realize that's what builds meaningful connections. Like, it'd be easy to sit up here and just be like, dude, like, being an artist is sick, or like, we're awesome at everything.
Just learn perspective, man.
Yeah,
You'll
man.
be good.
Like, hit some anatomy. All that stuff. But it's, a little bit of vulnerability goes a long way in actually having a connection with anything, whether it's friends or communities. It's an integral part of actually having success on social media. I have a friend who does YouTube storytime videos. His name's Ditus. But like, he was asking me like, why do you think these videos are good when he was starting out? And I was explaining to him, I'm like, there's two types of people that are telling these stories and doing these videos. There's the type that are always making these storytime videos, and they are always the cool person in the story. They're like, oh my God, everyone around me was so embarrassing, and this person was this, and I was just like, whatever, I'm cool. And then his stories, it was like everyone else around him seemed cool, and he was like the bumbling, insecure one. And you can see that when you look at the way people tell stories. Some people tell stories where everyone else is kind of, a fool, and I'm the smartest person, and all of that stuff. Or people who tell stories that's like, yeah, I'm the fool, and everyone else seems really intelligent. And those are the ones you connect with. Those are the ones that are actually putting themselves out there.
Yeah, it's also not to knock down those people who picture themselves as the cool person in the stories, and I think that's a result of their own insecurities of wanting to be perceived as such.
Yeah, it's not a matter of like saying, oh, it's no good. It's just like in terms of like building a lasting connection.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Okay.
So moving along, we're gonna get into some fun stuff for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we've been talking about the journey and all that stuff, and how
the deep emotional drive,
the toughness. But one key thing to your artistic journey is rediscovering the love for art, and this is something that I obsess over. I love to think about it. So if you're familiar with my videos at all, I like to do things like paint exploration, where the whole point of the art has nothing to do with any goal. I have no plan. There's no product. There is nothing I want to get to. I just want to have fun on the journey and just explore, see where whatever subconscious visual library stuff is going through my head. And it also lets you practice, some color theory and everything, kind of fun. But it is kind of this integral philosophical shift that happened to me, where I was like, a lot of times I'd be drawing and I would just be worried when I started drawing. I'd be like, oh, it doesn't look right, because all I could think about was the end goal. I wanted this pretty thing, and I wasn't even enjoying like the mark making. It was just like a stressful, like, that's not right, this doesn't look good, it's like not quite getting there, until I learned to just be like, let's just go backwards. Let's remember what it's like to be a little kid. Because I watch my, I mentioned this on the podcast, but yeah, watch my niece and nephew, and all they do, they just sit down. There's no plans. There's nothing. They're not trying to make a thing in the end. They just want to enjoy watching things appear. I move this thing down, and there's this line here, and it's staying there afterward. My hand is like a magic wand, and it's just leaving all these strokes, and I can form random things, and you never know what's going to happen. And then you can form stories that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And it's just this very kind of loving approach to a process and not a product. And I think that's a lot of people kind of forget about that side of art.
Yeah. I mean, so in the scenario you described, it's like the kid doesn't have a goal. He's just having fun, right? Well, maybe the goal is to have fun, because, that's always great. That's not to say that you shouldn't have a specific goal in mind. Like maybe you imagine a really elaborate design or a character or a scene from a movie, and you want to paint it or illustrate it. It's that to be able to have that, but also step into the automatic drawing mindset, where it's not really about making a product. Because if your target is an image in your head, you'll almost always be disappointed. But if your target is, okay, it's just about the journey, I just want to see it develop, and I'll make decisions on the way. If it doesn't look like what I want it to, I'm okay with that. But that's also the willingness to just explore, which is why I think paint exploration is pretty profound. And there's another artist, what's his name, who did the automatic drawing? Stan Prokopenko had him on his channel. Do you know the name?
I can't remember, but he was talking about how Mobius and all these other great artists used to always do these exercises of intuition. And intuition is like this core, just serious fundamental to art that is just, it gets forgotten. No one in art school is like, we need to get you drawing more intuitively. We need to work on your intuition lines, because every time, like if you're drawing with intuition, your brain knows what looks good. That's the exciting part about it. You know what looks good.
It's a
to some
dance.
extent. You learn all this stuff. But if you're drawing, too rigidly, too slowly,
It's got to look like this. It has to be like that. And
you're
the
not
colors have
going
to
to
be
get
perfect.
those shapes, those flows.
When I was working at ArenaNet, I was like under a lot of stress, anxiety there. Well, nobody would have guessed, but I totally was. But Teo Prince, is he here? Excellent artist, Teo Prince. I loved his work. I loved how his paintings looked, and I wished my work looked like his. But when I watched him sketch over, his little drafting table, it's like he was conducting a song, and he would kind of get in there and sip some tea, and just it looked like he was playing. And so there is definitely something to connecting with that natural part of yourself and letting your soul breathe into your work, as opposed to, well, I want it to look professional. It has to look like this, blah, blah, blah. And it really gets in the way, so, yeah.
Yeah, it comes to the realm of tempo and rhythm, which I like to obsess over lately, but the idea that you should be moving with a certain grace, and it's different for
The universe.
all the purposes, but some lines should be made quickly, loosely. Some lines should be made with a sense of control. And if you're doing all these things, your instinct will lead you to things like big, medium, small, and the golden ratio, and things like, just ratios of open spaces and dense spaces. And that's what really makes design look good, is all these things that they're in your brain, but it's hard to get them out. So you have to exercise this sense of intuition and doing things. Just open the page. In case you don't know, automatic drawing is just looking at a page and just letting your hand kind of loosely flow around. Don't put weight on your arm. That's very important, because you're not going to be loose enough if you're leaning on your arm when you draw. So just kind of get in there, be loose, have fun with it. And to take it to the next level, like I like to do, you have fun with it, and then you look at it and you let your visual library be like, that kind of looks like a clown, or this kind of looks like a robot. And then you kind of explore those things. And then maybe you're like, oh, well, now it doesn't look like that. I'm just going to go with whatever path it leads me. And just having that sense of freedom and not, it also comes into the realm of just not being too precious with your babies, being willing to tear stuff down and rebuild it.
Right. So adding to rediscovering love as an element of how to, let's say, solve all this. A couple things I want to add, which we'll kind of talk about in the next slide, but it's that one thing that each and every one of us has to realize is that we have to accept that there's always going to be hurdles. You might see a bunch of really good artists, and it looks like they're just like, their life is perfect, and they're successful. They have millions of followers and lots of money and great artwork, but even they also deal with things. And so I would say stop imagining the scenario where like, oh, not everything works out just fine, and instead say, okay, I'm going to go forward, and I'm okay with the fact that there's going to be hurdles. I'll just overcome them because I'm going to be strong and move forward anyway.
All right, so that's just a little bit rediscovering love for art. I mean, it's a good time. Art is great. Art is fun. You guys should, if there's not like a smile on your face just constantly when you're walking through those halls out there, like you need to just get a little looser, get a little, it's so much fun over there, and just looking at art, it's literally the most magical thing you can do. Art is magic.
Let me just cut in there, because I'm still dealing with parts of myself where when I see all that amazing art, I wish I could fully enjoy it, but it's also saying, hey, you're not as good as that. Hey, what you're doing isn't anywhere like this. Why do you even do your own thing when it's
But
like
it is.
so
It's so good.
it can be, but I'm still working on these things, and but talking about it helps. So yeah.
All right. Anyway, as we kind of touched upon in early life, all that stuff, the biggest part of this isolating activity that we all call art is making sure it doesn't turn into just a purely isolating thing, and learning to share that passion with others and get other people involved. Because to go back a little bit to like rediscovering love, I know I just love my let's rediscover love again, guys.
Oh my.
No, but like the exciting things about art are that everyone has unique stuff to offer the art world, and that's not just like some hokey like we all got a great thing to share. No, like literally scientifically, you all have distinct visual libraries. No one has seen the things you have seen. No one has grew up in your house and saw, that one dog that ran down the street when you were 5 years old or whatever. These little tiny things, they're all pieced together in your visual library. And that visual library gives you a unique ability to draw, potentially different things and design different things that anyone else will ever reach. At the highest levels, you can all become God masters of art throughout the universe, everyone in this room. And I would know that every single one of you would wind up making different stuff, different looking stuff. So, you know, getting into this social connection thing, one of the most exciting things about that is that you can then enjoy exploring stuff with other people because they can feed into your visual library. You can collaborate with them and make stuff that neither of you would ever be able to make on your own and just do all this stuff. I don't know. I get really excited when I think about this.
Well, to add to that, a couple of years ago, I launched Patreon so I could escape the studio world and I didn't have to work for anyone anymore. That was the goal. But I also launched a Discord, and it's like a place where you can kind of go online and chat and share whatever. But there's like voice chats and stuff. What I didn't expect is like this, I guess, community that I developed there. And some of you are here. You should raise your hands. Yeah, hell yeah. And it's so crazy to see you people in person right now. It's like such a wow, because we've been talking on voice chat and sharing artwork and like encouraging each other for years now. And then LightBox has been a great opportunity to like be in one place and high five and be like, okay, this is awkward, fine, okay, but cool, let's hang out anyway. So that's really nice, and it would have never happened if it wasn't for willingness to make connections with other people. So all the people you'll meet here at Lightbox, there's a potential story there, whether it's, hey, yeah, we you know, decided to make a little project, or hey, you know, you share your work and you end up working for them, or they're working for you. You never know what happens. So you might be shy or filled with social anxiety, as we all are in one way or another, but the willingness to just take a step forward and realize it's not going to be the end of the world and shake someone's hand, be like, hey, can I see your work and whatever, it could end up changing everything. Because we make stories up in our head of all the possible things that it could go wrong, and we make that the reality, but once you just prove that wrong, you realize that your brain is pretty bad at predicting what's going to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is, you touched on it, but we really, really want to encourage each and every one of you to try to make some new friends, build some new social connections at this expo. You know, maybe you'll talk to the person next to you when you're doing stuff or whatever, when you're getting out of here.
We should do those like TED Talk things where we
yeah.
make them introduce themselves to each other.
Yeah, we're going to go through and everyone's going to talk about their favorite food.
I even feel uncomfortable here.
No.
Okay. Okay, so but to add to that, so this is another element of improving your mental state and trying to be happier. But there's also things that are tangible and like measurable by science, and that's things like fitness, sleep, having a routine, not staying up till 5 a.m. every night. And it's like, for me, when I was on antidepressants, I was on Zoloft, that changed everything for me. I was able to like reframe the world and see everything anew. But the weird thing about that was it limited what I was able to feel. So I started working out, like running, rock climbing, and doing, you know, lifting weights and here and there. And I realized I didn't really need the medication anymore, because the fitness developed a routine and my body started getting used to this new rhythm, and that provided all the, I guess, things that we need to function effectively. Did you want to add to that?
Oh no, I think we're no, because I was like, yeah, we can move on to like Q&A and stuff, because there'll probably be some fun questions.
I want to talk about exercise.
Oh
no, okay.
I exercise too, for the record. I'm very strong.
All right, so this is the push-up contest portion of our talk.
I'm not afraid. I'm literally not afraid of push-up contest with you.
I'm like 100 pounds heavier than you. All right, go. So yeah, we could just skip to the
fitness, though. Very important. Work on your do your squats and your deadlifts. Everyone get a gym membership.
Yeah.
Everyone
Make friends, lift.
Exactly.
All right, so I don't want to keep you guys for too much longer.
No,
so
we're gonna do a Q&A.
I know. I'm saying let's jump into the Q&A. That's what I was saying, Rob.
I said that, and you said I want to talk about fitness.
That's not what. Okay, I just want to talk a little bit more.
Q&A, everyone. Q&A.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is questions and answers time.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, wait, is that Walker?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Something that I'm curious about. So when navigating community of people that are able to critique you, that actually care about
Yeah.
who you are. Now, my question is, a lot of times also, people who are in that in-between range that aren't quite professional but are trying to get there, there's a lot of people in between that maybe have different goals when critiquing you, and sometimes can be like 4chan trolls.
Sure. Yeah.
Or sort of off that sort of beat. So how do you successfully navigate?
Sure. Well, the immediate answer would be find a way to not take things personally. But we're humans, so we do anyway. Ideally, the person teaching you or critiquing your work is somebody who wants you to win. And they see where you are and they see where you could do better. And maybe they are also professionals and they've been there. That's ideal. But sometimes that's not always what you get. It's like maybe somebody sees your work and they know what's wrong with it, but their way of telling you is, hey, that sucks and it's not working. But they're not being specific. It would just be trying, if you really want to learn from that person, you would ask specific questions like, okay, can you circle where it's not working? What is wrong with what you're describing if you're claiming that you know your head's in the way? Never mind. Okay. Because I like seeing the person I'm talking
Please
to.
remove your head.
Yeah, so I'd say don't take it personally, which is something hard to actually implement. But also, do you have anything to add to that? Yeah.
A lot of times when people are critiquing other people, they're really just kind of critiquing their own work and kind of just seeing it kind of as a reflection. And sometimes people are like just, very harsh on themselves, and it kind of comes out in the way they critique other people. So you can't take it, to be like, oh man, they really they're probably just struggling with their own work.
Right.
And that comes out when they're like, what do you think of this? And they're like, well, look at those tangents everywhere. I'm obsessed with them. Like, I'm always just like seeing like my own issues. It's like that thing where you tend to just see like the problems that you dislike about yourself and other people, and those are the things that actually irritate you.
Yeah.
And you're like, stop doing. Oh, it's so annoying. But it's really just the thing that is just reminding you of something you dislike about your own
yourself,
actions.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? Not the way you wanted it.
He's fine. He's fine. Let's.
Still dealing with like the cynics trauma from years ago.
Yeah. He's
Remember, it means I love you.
anything else? Yes. Hi. Hello. Hi.
So when you're talking about like the hyperfixation of perfection
Yeah.
in the process of drawing, do you have any you can do like those baby steps for how to kind of start pushing past that and rewiring your brain not to?
Yeah. I'd say try to find the moment in your past where you first felt you needed to be perfect. And for me, it was a result of because the people who were evaluating me couldn't, they couldn't see me for who I was or something like that. So I would say try to find that initial moment and try to address it and be honest with it. But a more practical thing could be you could physically out loud say like, okay, I know it's not going to be perfect, but I'm just going to let it be the best that I can, the best that it can be, and whatever that is, I'm okay with that, and do it again and keep going. And eventually, through cognitive behavioral therapy, by doing it over and over, it could subside. So, hope that answers your question. Yes.
Question for Sinix. Sinix, you're very good at analyzing art, people, like Jackson Pollock, for instance.
Okay.
How do you approach analyzing something or someone?
That's a tough one.
Okay.
How do I analyze? I have no idea how to answer this right away. It's kind of stumbling.
You should make a
little
video
bit.
about it later.
Yeah, just
for
make
this
it-
guy specifically.
No, but when it comes, obviously, analysis is looking at trying to figure out motivations. So if it comes to someone like Jackson Pollock, and you're like, what is he trying to say? Like, could possibly be his motivation? So you're kind of like looking through it and saying like, okay, what was he doing? What was he trying to show? No, he's trying to show that emotion, like doing things with energy and emotion, is a valid. Like we recognize it as people, and we kind of are drawn to it. So you can take something like that, be like, well, Jack, all he was doing was splattering paint around. Why do people connect with it? And you can be like, oh, because energy and this kind of raw, just emotion is something that people actually can feel. It resonates with them. So I like to be like, okay, well, how do I apply that to what I'm doing? And be like, oh, I find that when I make lines, that are more energetic, people just naturally are more likely to enjoy the piece. I know a lot of you have probably gone through this process where you make a sketch and you're super into your sketch, and then you try to make some clean line art, and then you're like, this looks terrible. I hate it. It looks dead. It has no life to it. It just feels stiff, feels awkward. That's because those lines weren't made with energy. It would be like, I don't know the best way to put it, but yeah. So those are things you can learn from, seemingly silly things like Jackson Pollock or other modern art things. There's a lot of lessons to be learned when you just analyze everything. Yeah, that's my answer.
Quite a question. Yeah. Anything else? Yes. Hi. Hello.
Hi. Earlier you guys were talking about how important vulnerability is.
Mm.
How did you guys become more comfortable being vulnerable?
I think it was just willingness to try it a little bit, and it's like dipping your toes in a pool. And it was, you just kind of find yourself in a place around people you trust, and to just slowly be yourself. And for me, it was like having the right friends, but also on YouTube, I'll just say this thing that was genuinely bothering me, and I knew I was admitting things I didn't want to admit about being flawed. And I thought, well, the assumption was everyone's going to point and laugh and make fun of it, but the result was the opposite. Those videos get way more likes and way more blah blah blah. Not that was the intent, but it was just little by little the willingness to put a little bit more of you out there. There's no, I mean, you could try to jump out, but I don't know how to do that. Yeah.
Just show up to a Walmart in your underwear. It's just like, this is me, everyone.
This is me. Questions? Anything else? Yes, you can ask more questions. Yeah.
So we were talking about getting the passion back and learning to love art like a little kid again. Do you have any advice for once you get that, maintaining it?
Like capturing it, right? In a bottle. I don't know, because I'm asking that same question. I don't know.
I'm trying to constantly just, like I said, in my opinion, when you're doing things like just a little bit more intuitively, it tends to maintain that happiness and that joy in the way you do all that stuff.
Oh, what was the question? Go ahead.
No, it was about recapturing it. So there's like ways to implement all of this like stuff, but like scale it down a little bit, but still like make sure you're kind of like having fun with just your mark making, the way you like make a single line. Like if you can learn to like just kind of like throw it out there and be a little bit more joyful about it, tends to make the whole thing a little bit better.
It's like we see this behavior with children, but also with really old people who just don't care anymore. So it's like this. Okay, it's just a planet. We're here together. I'm just gonna be whatever. So it's this in between phase where you're trying to define everything, and you realize at the end maybe that a lot of this stuff just doesn't matter, and being yourself.
Yeah, the original like before I called it paint exploration, I put up a video. It was just called the Zen of non-attachment, because that was what it was. It was not saving anything and just being like, there's going to be, isn't just going through ideas. So people will be like, oh, that was like, you should save that painting. That painting was awesome. You should have like developed that. And I'm like, it doesn't. It's just about enjoying it. So being non-attached to just art in general is just it's a great feeling, and you should just always be, the old saying is, if anyone ever asks you like what's your favorite art piece you've made so far, or whatever, not so far, that ruins it. But if someone says like, what's your best art piece, you just say the next one, because it's always the next one. That's the best one. You're always looking forward to, like, knowing you can do better, knowing that sometimes have you ever been through that horrible feeling where you've been working on a digital painting for a long time, and then it gets corrupted or something and you lose it all? Oftentimes, like, you'll redo it, and it feels like the end of the world at first, but you redo it, and you're like, yeah, that actually didn't take that long, and it actually kind of feels better, and maybe I kind of like it, actually, surprisingly. I just expected to hate it, but it worked out, and it was
Yeah,
fun.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like that answer. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes. Hello.
Hi, I was just wondering, something that I'm lacking in my journey is patience, and that's sort of something that I've been having a problem with since I enjoy a work-life balance, but I also don't want to give up social life, so I've been, furthering my career in art.
Hmm.
So, it's just the fear of that. I just don't want to neglect my current family. And I just know that patience is
What?
the only solution.
So, what do you feel impatient about?
Well, it's more like the urge of like, getting an MIT job
Mhm.
to pursue my career. So I know it's something. I know that's kind of a problem. So I just wanted to know how can I develop the patience for that.
You have any thoughts on that?
Ooh, I was like thinking in my head. I was
It's a
hoping you would
hard-
answer first because I was like, oh, let me think about that. a minute.
It's a hard question to answer, but I think
It is.
Yeah, developing patience is probably something you can get out of sitting with yourself, and I don't like to say like meditation. We're just gonna like say no, more like being in the reality of everything and accepting and being okay with how long something is going to be, how long something's going to take, and that moment of accepting how long that's going to take should give you a little bit more relief with feeling impatient, because we all want to get there. We all want to get out of our day jobs and do that thing, but so our realities are sometimes not as ideal. But being okay with that and overcoming that hurdle ought to be a step forward.
Yeah, I don't have I don't have anything like super in depth to add to that.
Yeah.
It's like
You're not the first people that I've asked. So.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean it's really, to try to be more patient. It's more of like your mindset on just, it kind of gets more existential than anything. Your mindset on like, what should you be doing with your time, what's valuable, and all of this stuff, and what are you trying to get out of life on like a deeper level, and all these things, and it turns into that kind of question to some extent. But in my opinion, the key, like if you're feeling impatient, yeah, you should be kind of reanalyzing that, because obviously the key to everything is just trying to find, the happiness in every day-to-day life. So figuring out what's the formula for that. And there's, I don't know, as long as you're enjoying it, it's hard to say like there shouldn't be like a specific goal, but yeah,
Sure.
it's hard. It's hard to give like a specific answer.
So I hope that added to your answers.
He's more confused
what others,
and more impatient than ever. He was like,
We don't
please
have-
hurry up. I'm not only am I gotta be somewhere else.
Yeah, I wish we had like a straight answer that's like a 1, 2, 3 step. But yeah, cool. Well, speaking of impatience, yes.
I'm really impressed with your guys' ability to connect your problems with art to your childhood.
Mm.
How did you guys realize that, I guess? Or just understand that is connected, I guess? Like, I've never thought about that before until literally right now.
Well, it's like, imagine you're programming an AI robot, right? And your early programming for it wasn't so good. And then you're like, okay, well, it's good enough. And you keep programming it. And then it functions, but it's still messed up with the early programming. You have to go back and debug. We're the same way. And so I kind of just pieced it together where these emotions are there, but they don't have to be there forever. And so it didn't click right away, but I think I just started putting it on a whiteboard on how I felt. Like I would draw myself as a stick figure and say, okay, this is I feel like this, and I feel like these people are up here down above me judging me. It's like, okay, why do I feel that? Oh, well, I remember this is someone, and I put names of people who I knew back in high school, and they treated me this way and that way. And I was like, okay, well, here's evidence that I can go to the past and then look at it and rearrange it so that I don't feel that way anymore. And yeah, that's kind of my answer.
Yeah, there's a time in your art journey where it's just like, you have fundamentals to work on, and you're just like all that stuff seems very just obvious. What should I be working on seems very obvious. But I think just in general, artists tend to be hyper self-analytical, and like once you're like keep doing art for, eventually you kind of wind up in this stage where it's just like deep, kind of more like thinking about all this weirder stuff, but really analyzing just anything you can, because it's like puzzles you're trying to solve. And a lot of us, the reason, like a lot of our appeal in art, it's kind of roundabout, but it's like puzzle solving. It's just kind of, we like puzzle. Most people that are artists, we enjoy trying to solve things and make these puzzles kind of happen. So
we are the puzzles.
You should all read Three Body Problem. It's a great book.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about Three Body Problem.
okay.
Yeah. Science fiction, hard science. Never. It's good.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Any other? Oh, there's a question over
Yes.
there.
Hello. Hi. Hello.
I wanted to ask, because like you guys were talking about like the emotions and how emotions can affect art. How do you be unattached to your art when emotions are involved?
So yeah, I mean, I think if there's physical movement on a piece of paper that you're doing, and you can call that art, that's valid. Not everything has to be an emotional thing, because what if you're doing a job and the things that you're doing for your art job aren't necessarily a reflection of your emotional childhood. So there are categories of things that you're doing. Some are direct expressions of who you are and your emotions, and some are just things that are kind of mechanical movements. And so, but if you're also asking how do you detach your emotions from your art so that you can be free of them, is that kind of? Well, it might.
No,
we could dig
it's a
in
good
there. Maybe
question.
there's a. Like, so what's the scenario for you and that brought this up?
I feel like when I have expressed like personal emotions through my art, like it can be very relieving, but then also like when I do it and it comes out right, I get attached to it.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with being attached to.
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about non-attachment, but like there's a place for that, because that mainly comes into this other aspect of art, which is just trying to enjoy more like functional kind of art kind of stuff, like art as an art thing, art for art's sake kind of stuff. But like if you're like writing something vulnerable and stuff, like there should be like, it's okay to feel this attachment toward it. Like if you make that stuff, I don't want you to think like when I say like, oh, you shouldn't be attached, like it means like that there should be no emotional like investment in something, because that's
demands.
because once again, it's a balance. It depends on all your goals, but vulnerability is leaving emotional in like some aspect of emotional involvement in your art or in the things you're doing, your creativity. So it's there's different places for like kind of all these things, which kind of gets I know it's just muddying the water right now. I'm just muddying everything, but yeah, it's like trying to figure out what works for you with just all these topics. We're just kind of spraying all the topics out there, they're just flying around, and you can be like, that's what's going to work for me at this time, but maybe not. It's going to work for me at that time, and
Sure.
it's like a dynamic puzzle you're trying to solve.
So I think we can take maybe one more question, because I have to be back at the table around 4. Do we have one last question? And yes.
Recommendations for fantasy novels.
You're asking for it, or you're giving them?
I'm asking for it because you mentioned King Killer Chronicles. I read them, I love them, and I can't find anything that lives up to them.
I'm trying to find some too. Yeah. King Killer Chronicles. Yeah, you've read them too. Yeah. Name of the Wind is the first book. I loved it. That doesn't count as a question. It's so short. Any other questions from the audience? Yes. Hi. Hello. Yes.
Do you guys both feel like you're following your intuition right now, or living life?
I think so. You mean with this talk?
No.
I'm getting there. I think I'm sorting out the driftwood and being free of a lot of things. But yeah, I'm heading towards that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm definitely feel like I'm in the river right now. I'm on the lazy river going around.
Yeah, we can
all
tell.
the PP water just drifting down. But no, I feel very comfortable. Like I feel like, oh, this, you know what? All the decisions I'm making, they feel like they're the right. You know, I'm kind of I'm in that zone where it's just like I found out, I love teaching. I know why I love teaching, so I'm just going to pursue those things. And I don't feel a strong pressure to try to course correct into like other things at any moment. Like, eventually there will be other things. And I know that they're kind of, maybe down the road I'll be like, oh, I want to focus on, books or, doing things like that. But for now, I'm just like, as long as, like I said, day-to-day happiness cannot be anything to ignore. You got to kind of just learn to just be like, I know where this is kind of where it might go. Maybe I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm just going to kind of coast with it as long as I'm enjoying these things. And so I'm in the intuitive state, for now. I definitely wasn't in the past, but I feel pretty.
You ever watch those like old interviews of artists and musicians, and they're like talking in the same way we are right now? And I remember watching them be like, those guys are silly. They're dumb. Like now we're
dumb.
those guys. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up.
Yeah, and just, just a couple quick.
Come on.
I just want to say a couple things. Once again, to reiterate, now that we're kind of wrapping things up at the end, when you're leaving, take a moment, say hello to the person next to you. Like quick show of hands. Who loves pineapple on pizza? Okay, those are your enemies. If you didn't raise your hand, don't talk to those people. Make a mental note. You're not going to get along with them. They're terrible people, and they're wrong. But maybe you saw someone that didn't raise their hand, and you were like, this guy actually.
All right. Okay, well, I really appreciate that y'all came out here. There's a lot of fun stuff out there. Enjoy the con and make some friends.
Yes,
and, thank you so much.
If you need an icebreaker, ask them who their favorite artist is or something.